Menstrual discs are becoming a lot more popular these days. You're welcome. So I wanted to cover how to remove them mess-free or as mess-free as possible in every single scenario. Hey everybody, welcome to the Period Nirvana channel. My name is Kim Roses. I'm a reusable period products expert. And if you're new to reusable period products and you're just getting your feet wet, this is definitely the place to be. I have tons of different resources here on YouTube, but also on my website and other social media platforms to help you find the right product for you and succeed. One of the resources I have that's super popular is the Period Nirvana quiz. That is linked in the video description below. You can take that quiz to find the right product for you. And once you're ready to make the switch or you have a new product you need, make sure to check out period.shop. That's my store for reusable period products. All of these brands are super curated and represent the highest quality brands in the industry. It's not full of gunk like you're gonna see on those billion-dollar websites. These are just the best of the best. And by shopping at period.shop, you support the free education I provide here on YouTube. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe for more helpful content like this. So you've been hearing about this new product called a menstrual disc, and you are super intrigued. Maybe because it is suction-free and you don't like the suction of menstrual cups. Maybe because you just heard someone say it was super comfortable. Maybe because you heard they are really good for super heavy periods, they're convenient. All of those things are true and then some. It used to be that removing menstrual discs was perceived as extremely messy, very involved, and that was because the original designs were mostly just a round circle like this. And I'll definitely get into some techniques that you can use to reduce the mess, even with just the most basic discs when you remove them, to avoid that dreaded blood drawer activity. There are also new designs on the market that make removal either much less messy or can make them entirely mess-free without a lot of extra additional effort. So let's talk about suction really quick. Menstrual cups have long been the most popular internal reusable product. They've been around since the 1930s. Of course, more people have heard of them, and even still some people call these. A disc is round or oval shape. It is much larger than a menstrual cup, and these are suction-free. These are not. These can be a little messier to remove. These are typically mess-free because everything stays in it as you remove it. And one thing I will show you really quickly just before we get into discs is the difference between cups and discs. Suction. A menstrual cup creates a suction and a seal inside of that vaginal canal. And so when you pull down on it, if you don't break the seal, it can be a little uncomfortable. Some people just don't like it. Some people feel like things are moving. They're not. They're not going to suck out your uterus, but it is an uncomfortable feeling. And if you have an IUD in place, you might want to use a menstrual disc because they're suction-free just for a little more peace of mind. The other thing about IUDs with cups and removing them is that you tend to pinch them to remove, and that does increase the likelihood that you're going to grab those strings that are hanging out of your cervix. And to be completely honest, pulling strings is way more likely to be the reason that you disengage your IUD with a menstrual cup than the actual suction, but that's a whole other video for another day. So instead of pulling on your cup, you do want to break the seal, pull it straight down, but you can see that when you pull something straight down, that mess is pretty contained and blood is pretty thick. But when you remove a menstrual disc, this story does change. I love menstrual discs. I will be the first person to recommend a menstrual disc. I think they're life-changing. I used to use cups. I primarily use discs now. But I'm not gonna lie and say that removal isn't a challenge and is certainly not for everyone because of the potential mess involved. And they're just a lot more involved. They're a lot more involved to insert, but they're also a lot more involved to remove. I'm not trying to dissuade you from using a menstrual disc, but I do want to let you properly confront the realities of removing a menstrual disc, and then I'm going to bring you back around to the idea by the end of this video, I promise. When you're removing a menstrual disc for the first time, no matter which brand, which product, which style of removal you're going for, I would suggest doing it in your shower first, just to not have to think about making a mess of your bathroom floor because, you know, it can add a level of stress that you don't need in an already somewhat new and anxiety-riddled experience. Let's start with the most basic way to remove a menstrual disc, which is a hook and pull. This is when you are hooking the rim of your disc and dragging it out of your body. This method is going to work most for anything that is just simple, basic, and round. Hooking the rim and pulling. Since menstrual discs are tucked behind the pubic bone, they are pretty slotted in there. If the disc is the right fit for you, it's going to stay in place against all your different muscle movements, your regular activity, but when it's time to remove, you are going to be able to reach it and pull it out just like that. Because your menstrual disc is suction-free, It can be easier than removing a cup, if not messier. So when we talk about hooking and pulling, that's referring to a disc with a really soft basin, but with a firmer, thicker rim. And that's when it's going to be the easiest product to remove in this style. Insert a clean finger, put into the vagina, find the front rim of your disc, and then hook it and pull it downward. Now, things are going to get a little squishy in there. Things are essentially getting squeezed out as you remove the blood drawer thing. The best way to remove a disc with this method and reduce the mess is twofold. One, you want to hook it and pull it up as you drag it out to try to keep things level as much as possible. Once the disc is at the opening of your vagina, that's when you want to engage your thumb. So you use the finger first until it's really close, and then you use your thumb. That's when you pull upwards. You want to try to keep it up. Now the disc is still going to squeeze. So that means some excess, depending on how full it is going to flow over it. But again, you're over a toilet or in the shower and you've kept it upright. That's how you remove it with the hook method. Once I've discussed all the removal methods, I do want to share an additional tip to make every removal as mess-free as possible, but that'll be at the very end of the video, so keep watching. For these same styles of discs, if hooking and pulling doesn't work for you, there is another way to remove your disc, and that is the pinch. You can pinch. I didn't really have a catchy name for that. Can we call it the Mr. Krabs? Can we start it? Can we start this? The Mr. Krabs? Okay, Mr. Krabs. For visibility, I'm just going to keep using this Nixit so that you can see it inside the model. When I use a basic round disc or basic oval disc without any removal aids, I typically end up using the Mr. Krabs technique because I'm not always able to hook and pull something over my pubic bone, and that might be the case for you. So if hooking doesn't work, let's try pinching. Take your thumb and your pointer finger and insert until you find that front rim. You want to pinch that front rim, and we're going to do the same thing that we did with hook and pull. You still want to angle it as upright as you can during removal, like that, to reduce any mess that spills onto your hands. Dump and wash. So it's really basically the same mechanism, except you are putting your thumb into your body a lot more. So that might not be as comfortable for everyone as hooking and pulling, but it is more effective and a little more reliable in a lot of cases because you have full control with two different fingers. Here's the last removal technique for a really basic disc that doesn't have any other ways to grab it that's just a round rim. If you've struggled with the hooking or the Mr. Krabs, we're going with it. It's called Mr. Krabs now. You can do a hook over. Hooking over is obviously going to be a messier experience than hooking under because you are dipping your finger right into whatever is in that disc. But if you are really struggling to get your disc out with any of the other methods, you need to do something. This technique can be more effective than hooking or Mr. Krabs. So go ahead and insert a finger. Instead of this direction, you want to put it like this, Trying to put myself into the model like this, not like this. And then you hook over the rim, grab that rim, so now your finger is hooked over, and then you are dragging it out. You once again want to engage your thumb to get it, and you can still do all of the other tips to reduce the mess by keeping it upright. You're hooked, you're keeping it upright, but obviously your finger is going to be dipping right into the pool of blood that is sitting there, and because there's so much movement, it might spill out a lot more than trying to keep this up against your vaginal wall as you drag it out. There's a space here. You're just making a bigger mess with this. But if you need it, it's there. Do it in the shower, do it over your toilet, any of those things. And let's face it, you can wash your hands. You can wash your hands when you're done. It just is going to be a messier process. Now let's talk about some of the ways of removing discs that have specific design elements that are either meant to make your removals easier and or less messy and or more accessible. And there are a lot of options on the market, and there will be, I'm sure, even more in a few months or years after I've posted this video. The first brand that came out with a removal aid was Lumma disc. This one's been out for several years. It was one of my earliest and favorite discs. It is very similar to a tampon string, but the string is made of silicone. The stem that's attached to the rim is there for you to grab it and pull it. Since it is suction free, that's something you can absolutely do. I will say though that Lumma string is very thin and it has broken off for people. Do be aware, do be gentle as you pull this because it is quite flimsy. When you're removing the Lumma disc with the string, think about the mess factor. As you pull down, you want to pull it past the pubic bone, which is going to give the most resistance just because it is a shelf it's sitting behind. Start pulling, and then when it gets closer, go ahead and engage your finger and your thumb on the rim, which is going to be the most stable. Pull out, keep it upright. There you go. That's it. Dump it out, wash it. So if you don't like the string for Lumma, you can certainly just cut it down shorter or you can cut it completely off. Some people tuck it to the side, whatever. But it's there if you need it. It is kind of like a tampon string, and it gives you peace of mind that you're not going to lose it. And of course, Lumma is one of the discs that works if you have a high cervix, because reaching that rim might be hard for you when you have a high cervix. So it's a brand to consider. Now for notch style discs. The first notch style disc was the Cora disc that came out a few years ago. Notch style disc is one that has a little finger notch, exactly like it sounds, where you put your finger, or whichever finger, it doesn't matter which finger truly, and then you drag it down just like that hook and pull method. Now, the issue with a menstrual disc with a notch is that a lot of them have this sloped area that makes hooking and pulling hard. So while you do have a notch for removal, it can sometimes rotate, meaning when you go to put your finger in to find the notch, it's not there. And then it becomes harder to remove than some of the just basic discs like a Nixit or a flex disc or whatever, because there's not a good way to hook the rim or pinch the rim based on the design. And that's for Cora disc and Salt disc both, because these are the two biggest name brands that have a notch style removal that works. So here's what you will do with a notch style disc. Whatever finger, I've been using my pointer finger, but some people do prefer their middle finger. Just reach in, feel for the notch. Let's hope it's in the center. This one's actually a little to the left, but you can still kind of pull down, get it past your pubic bone, and it's just like any other removal. You're going to engage your thumb once it gets closer, pull up towards your body to keep it upright, dump. There you go. And speaking of notch style discs, there is a disc with 3 notches around it. It's called Formoonsa disc. We are going to be bringing this to the US soon, fingers crossed. So keep an eye out for that. But if it does rotate, you have 3 different notches, and these notches are slightly different. They're kind of like a hybrid of a notch and a ring, but they operate in the same way where they give your finger something to pull and grip on and hook as you remove it. I'm going to show you how to remove another disc with removal aid. This one is the Hello disc, and I'm going to mention completely transparently that I helped design this, so if you are new here and you don't know that, now you do. But I designed it because the removal process of discs can be really frustrating. When you're wearing the Hello disc tucked, what you want to do is sweep a finger and find whichever loop you feel comfortable with using to remove. I actually prefer in a tucked position to use the closest loop to the rim because that gives you the most control over the product itself. So I sweep it around, get my finger underneath that loop, and just like bend my finger and pull it. And in this case, you keep it upright and it falls away from your finger to protect your finger, to shield your finger from the blood, and to let it fall away from your hand to prevent any of that mess. When you wear your Hello disc in the flipped position, the loop is essentially resting up against the front of your vaginal wall. And so it's going to be right there when you need it, and it's going to be a little bit lower than the rim of the disc, so it makes it easier to reach. And this is my preferred way of wearing Hello disc, and I find it the way that 99.9% of the time when I remove it, it's mess-free. So I just reach in, grab that first loop, it's the only loop you can grab, pull down, and it goes backwards away from your hand. When you do the Hello disc with it dropped, you can again reach for any of these loops. This one's the closest, but it's a little more floppy and you have less control. So again, if you're doing it with it dropped, I would try to at least pull it down a little bit and then switch and go to this one, this loop closest to the rim, because then you have a lot more control. As you pull down, you can dump it away from your body and keep your fingers clean. And then that is the same exact removal if you had cut off a loop. It's just using this loop, same thing. This is actually the newest menstrual disc that we have available. It's from a really respected brand, Diva Cup. It is Diva disc, and I've reviewed it here before. It has a removal loop, so that's gonna make it really easy to reach and pull. And because it's oval, it reduces the chance it's going to rotate. So more than likely, and really very, very likely, when you reach in, this loop is going to be right in the center where you need it to be instead of like over here or over here. Additionally, this has a leak-proof shield that is built in to help prevent any spillage because, as we've discussed, menstrual discs can spill as you're removing them, and this helps prevent any of that from flowing over onto your hands. So we're going to take our pointer finger or middle finger, whichever one, doesn't matter, reach in. You know what? I'm going to switch it up. Let's use this one. We're going to find that loop, which because it's oval shaped should be right in the center. You just pull down, and this shield is going to help, in addition to the way you pull it out, keep it from being messy. Keep it upright, pull like up towards your abdomen, and then let it fall away from you to prevent any mess. It could not be easier. For any disc that you can't get a really good grip on, whether it was a notch style disc that rotated or just a regular disc, any disc with a removal aid that has moved and you can't reach it, here is what you want to do. One option is to do that hook over. That one's going to be really easy for any of the brands with any different removal style. If you're struggling to remove a menstrual disc, go into your shower or put a towel down on the floor, squat low and push. Try to get the rim of that disc out from behind your pubic bone and into a lower station. But between all of those things, squatting low, you are going to find it's easier to reach. Knowing that you have a high cervix, if you have a high cervix, look at Hello Disc or Lumma Disc because those are the ones that work the best for a high cervix. And another option is if you cannot get to the disc rim, try reaching whatever you can feel for. In some cases, that might be the actual basket itself, and try to pinch it to pull it in some fashion so that you can reach the rim, or just start pulling by the basket and get it as low as you can until you can reach the rim and pull. It was a lot of demoing, but I wanted you to see each process step by step to help you envision how things are going in your body and how things are coming out of your body without making a mess. Keeping it upright is really as key as possible. And I mean, it is awkward because you're doing this, you're pulling like this. Sometimes you might be pulling this way, but typically you're pulling like this as you remove it. Now, are you ready for my tip to make any removal, whether it has a special removal aid or not, as mess-free as possible? Here's what you're gonna do. If you have the ability to, before you remove your disc, if it's a certain kind that might be messy, like a regular round disc or a Lumma or even a notch style disc, what you wanna do is bear down a little bit and auto dump the contents if you know your disc is quite full. If you get most of the contents out of your disc, no matter which removal method, whether it's a hook or a pinch or a hook over or whatever, there's less blood to spill out, so you aren't navigating a very full disc to squeeze and then empty contents as you're removing it. Auto dumping is just this phenomenon where you are bearing down and it lets the disc tilt enough that some things come out. If it didn't go back into place, you're also in a good position where the rim is going to be really reachable. And if it did go back into place, you just do what you would normally do, hook or pull or pinch or whatever, and remove that disc. There are a lot of different techniques you can use to make sure your removal is as comfortable as can be. There is no suction, so once you have it down, you can just start ripping it once you really are familiar with removals. And with practice and with angling, all of those things, you can make sure that your removal is, if not mess-free, as low mess as possible. That way it's not a big deal. You can just wipe your fingers with some toilet paper and then go wash your hands. The reason menstrual discs are so much more convenient than tampons is that they can be worn for up to 12 hours. And if you have a really heavy period, even if you've tried menstrual cups before and you've found that you need to empty them often in public, you might not have that experience with menstrual discs because they hold more. And in addition, you might be able to do the auto-emptying, self-emptying function that gets you all the way through your day so you don't leak until you get home and you can remove in the comfort of your own home. So understandably, the messy removals is one of the most unattractive parts of switching to a menstrual disc, but between my own practice and switching to a menstrual disc that has a removal aid that made it mess-free, now mess is not an issue for me. So I know this isn't going to be 100% mess-free for everyone, and everyone's experience is different. If you're looking to find a menstrual disc that's going to fit you well, I have a lot of resources on finding the right size here on YouTube, and you can check out the selection on period.shop. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments. We'll see you in the next video of your vagina. flow in the why can't I say vagina? The blah, 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 blah.